What about now? We got sound? I think we got sound now. Do we got sound? Can y'all hear me? You know how we be dusting it up out here, family. Do we got sound now? Do we got sound? Can y'all hear me? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Number one in the chat, if y'all can hear me now, family. You know how we do up in the features, man. You know we got to have the technical difficulties. I am the technical difficulties master. All right. You know what it is. Family, friends, foes, haters, and haters. Welcome back to the features. I greet you all in peace and love with no hatred in my heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You know what it is, family. You know we got to be dusting it up. You done know. You done know every time. Like, how many times we got to go through this? You know, still can't figure it out, but it's all good, baby, because I'm still your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber. It don't make no difference, okay? We be catching them all the time, quoting the features, family. All the time, even word for word, using all our lingo, everything. And they don't want to give us some love because they can't do it. They can't do it because they know we're too hot, but it don't make no difference. We are still your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber. And at the end of the day, we got it going on up in this piece. We got it going on. We got it going on. Family, today we got a really good topic for y'all today. I mean, really good, okay? First of all, I want to say that essentially, I came across this topic because a Juma happened, and I was kind of listening to a whole bunch of different scholars and their take on the elections. There we go. There we go. We got the sound effects now. All right. And I came across, I was coming across all these different scholars and they take on the election and whatnot. And, you know, I wanted to do like my own thing, but I just wanted to do Dr. Yasir Qadhi because, first of all, he's, you know, despite, you know, how we might agree or disagree with him, he's still a scholar. He's earned his stripes. He's a scholar, right? You're talking about somebody who memorized the Quran, studied in Medina, taught in Medina, you know, lectured all over the world, running Al-Maghrib Institute. You know, he's earned a level of respect within scholarship circles, regardless, right? And at the same time, he is a second generation immigrant, I believe. First or second, if I'm not mistaken, right? I believe his parents were immigrants, so that would make him first generation, right? It's descendant of an immigrant. You get me? And we wanted to essentially respectfully react to some of his opinions on the election, because we put our opinions out there 10 toes down, no dust, and we made our opinions very clear. And what you have today is, because of what is going on in the Middle East, you're seeing really the difference between how Black scholarship is speaking and the immigrant scholarship is speaking. And this is part of the problem. And the reason why it's important for Black folk is because the reality is we have more experience with these devils than anybody else. We didn't immigrate here. Okay, we are not immigrants. We are part of the West, part and parcel. And our history is written in stone in the West. And despite all that, after all that Black folk have done in the West, you find these wicked devils still trying to erase us from the history here. And now we have the situation where I do believe that Donald Trump will win the election, not because I want him to, because he is a devil. He is, in fact, a devil. He's a demon, you know, and he's a very wicked person. Evil, just a outright evil person. But the level of his wickedness, most people can't even comprehend it. Especially when you get into the details of some of the things he's done and whatnot. However, even after all that, you have the same old bones and biscuits, you know, talking about, you know, Muslims for Trump and stuff. So I wanted to get into this. So let's just pull up with this video. Let me just pull it up here, family. 1 second, y'all. Right, and we'll get right into it. Like, subscribe, share, be on Patreon. 1 second, fam. Let me just cue this up. Let me go over here. The sound is good now. I hope the sound is good now, y'all. 1 second, baby. Let me get this up. Let's get this up. All right. So let's watch Dr. Yasir Qadhi work now.
So it is not lost on any of us here the difficulties we find ourselves in. This is the last week before the elections, and in all likelihood this is, well, as of yet, it has been the most difficult elections of our lifetime. Allah knows what the future will hold. But the fact of the matter is that in all likelihood, this election will decide quite a lot of things on the global level. There's even talk that we're close to World War III right now because of what is happening. Multiple countries are being involved in this debacle taking place. And because our country is directly related to every single one of those countries, Allah Mustaan, we are facing a very difficult situation right now. Tensions are at an all-time high. And Muslims themselves are very much divided. There's a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of accusations, even within our own community. Today, inshallah ta'ala, I want to shed a little bit of religious light. Now, I'm not going to be too explicit in my endorsement of any one group because of multiple factors. Of them is that this is a masjid, and the laws of this country do not allow explicit endorsements anyway. Nonetheless, political...
You're all saying you got some echo? What the heck? 1 second. How is that even possible? 1 second, family. Let me just go over here. How are you getting echo? You sure y'all getting echo? I don't understand how you're getting echo. Let me check here. If y'all are getting echo, just put ones in the chat so I can see if I can fix that. Echo? Okay, y'all are getting echo. 1 second, Fabi. Let me go over here. And let us do this. Lots of echo. What are you saying? Okay, 1 second, y'all. 1 second. Over here. Or we'll do this one. Okay, let me just play it. Let me know if y'all still hearing echo, okay? I'm gonna play it again.
Political talk is not endorsement, and one can criticize policies without endorsing. So I want to begin actually with an incident from the Sirah that demonstrates the natural reality of.
All right, so what he said here is a really important point that we touched up on a lot on this channel here. And that is the reason why you don't hear anymore any, like, very few khutbahs that move the people is because there's still echo. Okay, we'll try to fix that. Still echo. It's because since 9/11, your imams and your scholarship has been totally handcuffed in what they can preach. So they got to toe the line with the government and stuff, the non-Muslim government. And if they don't toe the line with the non-Muslim government, then they will lose all kind of, charitable statuses. They will lose the ability to, speak freely, all kind of stuff. Okay? So it's a whole different world with the scholarship and the leadership in the West. It's a different can of worms. Because on one side, you have people who don't get any play because they're not really about towing the line, right? And the majority of the imams, because the imams are now, employees of the masajid, they're totally towing the line because they're at work now, right? They're not about, uplifting the people and stuff, right? So he mentioned a very good point here. So in light of this, we got to give Dr. Yasir Qadhi a lot of slack. We have to give him a lot of slack because he probably, I don't know, I'm not sure if he actually believes this stuff or whatnot, right? Hold on, y'all. Let me just put this over here. Okay. I'm not sure if he believes all this stuff and stuff, right? But the point is that the imams in the West are really tied in what they can say. They really are. And the people haven't learned to support them either. Right? Or they used to support them, but now it's like a lot of infighting and infiltration, because infiltration is like on a record high, to be honest. Let's keep it a buck. The infiltration is on a record high. Okay. So anyways, let's keep watching, y'all. If there's echo still, let me know. Okay, let me just play this out. Let me know right away in the chat if y'all still hearing echo. All right, 1 second, family.
Living as a minority. It is narrated with an authentic chain to the tabi'in that our mother, Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha, who was, of course, eventually she married the Prophet, she migrated to, as you know, Abyssinia. And she was one of the 85 Muslims who were living in Abyssinia for more than 13 years. So they were a minority in Abyssinia. And she mentions to us that sometime in that time frame, what happened was that the nephew of Najashi began clamoring support and fomenting hatred against his uncle and wanted to overthrow his uncle and take power. And this eventually led to a civil war in Abyssinia, in Habasha. There was a civil war between Najashi and between his nephew. And it appears from the books of Sirah, and one of the problems is that these 10 years will only have a few.
Still echo? Okay, 1 second. 1 second. Let me just try to fix this once and for all. 1 second. The dustiness is on a all-time high. 1 second, y'all. Let me try and find out where this echo is coming from, y'all. 1 second. Okay. The dustiness, man. Let's see here. Where's the sound going here? Let me fix. Let's see. Audio. Where's the sound going? And it's only from the video, right? That's the only place where the echo is, right? Second. One second. It's not a Feachaz live without the dustiness. So my day ones, they know. 1 second, y'all. Okay, I think that one's okay. Let's try now. Let us try now. Let me know if there's echo.
Narrations. They're not narrating in a lot of detail. But what we can derive is that it appears that the nephew of Najashi was using the issue of the Muslims as one of his rallying calls. And he was claiming that if he gets into power, that he will then get rid of the Muslims. And Najashi, as you know, was supporting the Muslims. So Salama says that when we heard of the battle taking place, and I quote you directly from her own phrase, she said that we did not feel any fear that was worse than the fear of what might happen. She is saying the Muslims were petrified, terrified.
There you go. We did it, y'all. We got rid of the echo. We did it, family. All right, let's keep going, y'all. 1 second. 1 second. Let's keep going, y'all.
Of what is going to happen. And we began making dua to Allah. Nad'u Allah Azza wa Jal. We began making dua to Allah and asking Allah's nasr, nastansirullah, asking Allah's nasr for the army of Najashi against the army of his nephew. Now pause here before I move on. At this point in time, nobody knows Najashi is a secret Muslim. In fact, none of the Sahaba knew this. Only Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ when Najashi died. And Jibreel said, your brother Najashi has passed away, lead Salat al-Janazah for him. Up until that point in time, Najashi's Islam was totally secret. Nobody knew. From all apparent purposes, Najashi is a kafir and his nephew is a kafir. Salama says, we were making dua to Allah that we want Najashi to win. And we're asking Allah's nasr to come to the army of Najashi against the army of his nephew. And the night of the battle, we spent sleepless, awake. This is how scared they were, which demonstrates their existence was one of the political debates between them. They're so worried. They're spending the night in fear, like who's going to win? Until in their anxiety, they said, who amongst you will volunteer to go look at the battle and tell us who wins? Who's going to win the election? Who's going to win that? And Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, you all know Zubayr. Who is Zubayr? Ashara Mubashara and the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. He's the first cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. At this stage, he's around 19 years old. Zubayr was the youngest of them, and Zubayr was, mashallah, he was a bodybuilder, powerful man. He was a very athletic person, and he is now the youngest. Zubayr ibn Awwam said, I will volunteer. They said, how are you going to go? They're on the other side of the river. He said, prepare for me a water canister, but don't fill it with water, fill it with air.
Just a side point, because you know we got to keep up with YouTube's terms and conditions and react. Right, just a side point. Dr. Yasir Qadhi, really his niche should just be Sirah and history and these type of things. He's really good at explaining and unraveling the Islamic history in the English language, and all of his series are very interesting and informative. But I just want to say that real quick before we continue. Let's continue, y'all.
So he took a water canister, he took a leather, pouch, and he used it as a floating device to swim across the river that was a tributary of the Nile. It was a very fast-flowing river, dangerous river. Zubayr ibn al-Awwam used this type of scuba equipment, maybe I can say, and maybe if you don't mind me saying that, a scuba equipment type, to use it, to go underwater, under top of the water, and use that to then monitor the war from the river Nile. He's in the water and he's seeing what's happening. And he stays there until Najashi wins. And he then comes back rushing. In the middle of the night, he comes rushing, and they say that he took off his upper izar, waving it to the camp of the Muslims, that Alhamdulillah, Najashi has won, like as they see him from afar. This is the sign. He is so happy, he is quite literally jumping for joy, celebrating with his top garment, with his izar, top garment. He's celebrating that Najashi has won. And Salama said, we were the happiest we were when we heard the win of Najashi over his nephew. Now, of the most common sense aspects we can derive. And I only say these because, unfortunately, we still have some sentiments we need to gently, correct in this regard. It is human nature when your existence is threatened. It is human nature when Islamophobia is on the rise. It is human nature when your freedom is going to be taken away. You don't want it to be taken away. And you...
Ain't no such thing as Islamophobia. Ain't no such thing as Islamophobia, family. I'm sorry. I know I am whatchamacallit. Like a voice very far away in the wind on this point, but Islamophobia is a made up thing. I'm sorry. All respect to all the scholars who talk about Islamophobia and whatnot, but it's not a real thing. Okay, it's just not. Okay, from the time that Islam was given to the Prophet ﷺ, you had people hating on Islam and trying to destroy Islam. And just because you make a term Islamophobia doesn't make it a real thing. As a matter of fact, the term, in my humble opinion, the term Islamophobia does way more harm to the Muslims than it does help. Because what you're now doing is you're essentially turning Muslims into an ethnic group, or some type of a group for political purposes. Which you should not do that. Just keep Islam as the religion of truth, the religion of haqq. You're going to go through fitna as a Muslim, especially the more you practice, more fitna you go through. But that's just a side point. That's neither here nor there with our particular talk. I just gotta say, Islam, and for me, Islamophobia is not a thing. It doesn't exist. Right? It's just something that Muslims say in order to achieve some sort of, achieve some sort of sympathy or empathy from non-Muslims. I'm just saying. That's. Well, anyways, let's keep watching, y'all.
You want the party that will protect your freedoms to win. And so much so, the Sahaba are bringing in dua to Allah with one kafir party against the other kafir party. If dua to Allah is allowed between kuffar parties, then wallahi min babi awla, a priori, a million times easier. If you can make dua to Allah as a ritual between two parties, without a doubt, you can do much less than this, which is campaigning, which is voting, which is helping in the dunyawi sense, right? Again, I say this because we still have the sentiment amongst us that voting is haram, voting is shirk, voting is kufr. SubhanAllah, at this point, Najashi was a public kafir, and in his court, kufr practices took place. We know this from the seerah. When Amr ibn al-As and the others of Quraysh entered Najashi's palace, the first thing they did, they followed the custom of the time, and that is, they did sajda to Najashi. They did sajda to Najashi. And when Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and the Muslims entered, they were debating, should we do sajda, should we do not do sajda? And Ja'far ibn Abi Talib said, no, wallahi, I will not do sajda to other than Allah. And so he did not do sajda. Remember the story from, the conversation. My point being, Najashi's court is ruling by other than the law of Allah. Najashi has practices that are kufr. Najashi's court is a pagan or a kufri court. The Sahaba didn't say, if we make dua for Allah, this is an endorsement of all of the kufr of Najashi. And yet we have in our midst those who say, if we vote, it is an endorsement of all the kufr of that party. No, it doesn't work that way. This is a figment of your imagination. No rational person, no aqil, no person who understands politics, no person who actually votes, actually believes that when I vote for one candidate, this is an endorsement of everything about that candidate. Just like
this right here is an important point for even black folks to understand. Right? Especially when you're playing within a democratic environment. And this is why we say over here that we should be practicing, if you're going to practice democracy, you should practice it on your local level within your community, which is going to be much more effective when you do it like that. Quid pro quo, and galvanizing your own community, putting your own people in power on a local level. Right? This is much more important. And we're going to get to that in a minute anyways, because what he said is a very important point. Right? But anyways, I digress. Let's keep watching, y'all.
The Sahaba are saying we're making dua to Allah. One of these critics will say this means that they're making dua that shirk is done in the court of Najashi when they do sajda to him. No, no. This is a figment of the imagination of small groups of people that alhamdulillah they're getting less and less. We need to push back. That there is no kufr in voting. There is no shirk in voting. There is nothing wrong with wanting a party that will preserve your rights. And if you can make dua to Allah, and if you can be so scared you want Allah's nasr to come, and if you can send Zubayr ibn al-Awwam to monitor the elections or the civil war, this clearly shows you have vested interest. And there's nothing wrong with being a part of making sure you're vested.
This is another important point that he made that everybody should understand, especially Muslims, that voting is not kufr. Okay? Voting in itself is not kufr. Even voting is something that the Sahaba, they practice. Right? Voting in itself is not kufr. Right? The system of democracy, that system in itself, that is what's kufr. And if you prefer that system over what Allah has revealed in the Quran and the Sunnah, then this is something that is, that's a different story altogether. Okay. And of course, there's so many lectures from actual ulama. I would highly suggest some of you listen to the lecture of Shaykh rahimahullah, and what he said about voting and whatnot. Okay. And if it brings about if there's fa'idah for the Muslims, they should partake in it. Right. So we do not disagree here. Okay. This is something that, we do not disagree here. Okay. But anyways, I digress. Let's keep watching, y'all.
Interest will be manifested. Now, of course, that is a nice, easy, hypothetical situation when we have a Najashi. Who is our Najashi in the current climate? Who is our Najashi in the current climate?
This is another great point. Let's keep watching, y'all.
Allahul Musta'an. This is where we get the reality, okay? So once I've talked hypothetically that it is permissible to be a part of the system, it's okay to want to be a part of it and to influence and to make dua. This is human nature, as I said. You are disconnected from reality if you have any view other than this. We want our freedoms preserved, and it is our constitutional right, and we have the right to lobby and petition, like Ja'far lobbied directly with Najashi himself, and like the Sahaba are wanting one group to win over the other. Now, obviously, there is no democracy in Abyssinia. They cannot go vote. But my point is, if they are invoking Allah for one side, they are doing more than voting. This is what I'm saying. If they're making dua to Allah, this is a ritual, and they're allowing a ritual to make one side above the other. This is far bigger than casting a vote, and in your heart you know that I don't agree with everything about this party. Do you understand how I'm using that incident? If theology is allowed to be brought into an election, then without a doubt, the type of stuff that we do is, a priori, even more so, it is allowed. So the point though is not, is it allowed or not? We've gone over this multiple times. I've said this so many times. The issue is, what do we do in deciding our Najashi? And the reality is that in the current climate we are in, it is not an easy case. And this is where the tensions are rising. And I have witnessed, unfortunately, a very sad phenomenon, which is why I am addressing this topic today. And this phenomenon is that Muslim civic leaders and Muslim scholars are using language against other Muslims that is not befitting. Muslims are fighting other Muslims and accusing other Muslims of hypocrisy and accusing Muslims of not caring about Allah, of betraying the religion, of being treacherous to the religion of Allah if they disagree based upon political analysis. And this is what has prompted me to have a brief lecture today to address this inter-Muslim problem. Now,
Okay, so now we get into the meat of it, inshallah, right? And as I said, we're going to be very respectful to the Shaykh, right? But we're going to get deep into it, inshallah. Okay, so let's boogie.
For the record, a group of imams, yours truly, a group of imams have signed a very public petition that these imams have said that we should not reward any major of the two parties that has clearly endorsed genocide. Okay, this is an opinion. The language in that draft does not mention that if you disagree with us, you're a kafir. If you disagree with us, you're a deviant. If you disagree, no, it's simply an opinion. An opinion. And the wisdom of those people who signed that, the question is, the pushback is, a third party will never make it to the White House, at least not in the next 10, 20, 30 years. The third party, it is impossible that the third party will actually make it to the White House. So many people think this is a useless tactic. And the response is, no, you haven't understood the wisdom of why this group is saying what they are saying. When you vote third party, what you are doing is you're expressing bold dissatisfaction and anger at both parties. When you vote third party, which is a very small group, for the first time, this small group is getting significantly larger. This is the largest the third parties have ever been for Allah knows how many years. And therefore, what you're doing, you're sending a message to the two big parties that there is a sizable minority that is angry with you. And that minority, the message then will be, oh, both parties, you need to shape your policies to cater to the people that are angry at you. By voting third party.
Okay, this can only be done unless you make a few assumptions here. Okay. First of all, in our last live talking about this subject, we explicitly said, and we'll say it one more again, okay, that we do not believe in the system at all. Right? We know, especially as Black folk, we know very well what the system of democracy is all about. But even if we did participate in the system of democracy, right, which we don't, like I don't anyways, right? I do not, because I do not believe in it, right? And if I was an American, because I'm not an American, right? If I was an American and if I was going to vote, I would vote Green Party. I'm not going to vote Democrat or Republican. And the idea that you're voting in order to win is exactly what these parties want you to believe anyways. I highly suggest you read The Crowd, the Crowd by what should we call it? What's his name? Le Bon. What's Gustave Le Bon? I highly suggest you read that book. It's even still, let's say, for example, that this is some sort of symbolic message you are sending to each political party by voting third party. There's something more to that than being a symbolic message. We know very well, right, that the third parties are not going to win, correct? So if you give your vote to the right political spectrum, or the far right political spectrum, because there's no more left or right. It's either right or far right. You talk about Democrats or Republicans in the States. Is that a vote against genocide in the US? Yes or no? The answer is no. And you think that you're going to end a genocide with a vote, which is that's not how warfare works. Ending warfare takes time and planning. You're not going to end a warfare overnight. Joe Bass is asking what book. The book is called The Crowd. And the author's name is Gustave Le Bon. Okay, he's a French Renaissance man. Okay? Maybe one day I'll get into that book deep, right? But anyways, the point is that democracy is quid pro quo. And the immigrant community, they seriously believe, like it's totally insane. They seriously believe that they are going to change the world by voting. This is what they believe. They believe that if you vote, you're changing the entire world, because this is what the system wants you to believe. And this is not how change is brought about. It's not brought about like this. And if you don't know the rules of the game, then why are you playing? The only statement that is actually a statement is actually voting third party, i.e. Green Party. That's the only logical statement at the end of the day. But I digress. That's neither here nor there. Let's keep watching. Let's keep watching. Because it's not like whatchamacallit. I'm not trying to advocate for the Green Party here. I just want to make some points here. So just keep watching, yo.
Party, the message is given. You are sending the clear signal that both of you parties are bankrupt, and unless you change your policies, you are not gaining us back. Also, you are building long-term alliances with other people that are allying with you against the other two parties. When you go third party, you find lots of other demographics that are also angry with the system, and you can ally with them to break the two-party system. So the goal of third party is not immediate change, it is long-term change. And long-term change takes a while. It is gradual. Also, by the way, one of the things that you have to understand is that the third party, the way that our country works, is that if the third party gains more than 5% of the vote in specific areas and states, they will get federal funding, they will be listed on the ballot, they will become an actual viable threat, and they will destroy the monopoly of the two-party system. And that is actually happening in a number of areas. So, by and large, the philosophy of those who say third party is that how can you reward a genocidal candidate? How can you ignore the fact that both candidates are jumping over each other and advocating blatant genocide? So we will not do that. We will send the message. That is their perspective. As we're all aware, there are Muslim civic leaders, Muslim imams who disagree. You all saw a few days ago in the Republican side of things, right? The presidential candidate had a whole host of, imams behind him, mashallah, dressed appropriately as well, and saying Muslims for Trump. Okay, you saw this reality there. And these group of imams, if you ask them, how could you have endorsed this candidate? If you were to ask them, and I did reach out indirectly to get their point of view, because I don't make verdicts without getting the perspective. And one of them, through a mutual friend, gave me a very detailed analysis that Trump had a private meeting with imams in Detroit area. There was a whole room full of clerics and civic leaders, and they spoke truthfully and factfully. They spoke with a blunt attitude that we need this. And they laid out their 4 or 5, conditions. Number 1, stop the genocide taking place, right? And number 2, other things, the realistic demands that, anybody can make to the presidential candidate. And on record, and this is on video, Trump said all of these demands, you didn't need to make them. I'm already an advocate of them. That's what he said. And it's on video. And then he offered that group voluntarily, who wants to come on stage with me? And 5 or 6 of them volunteered, and the rest of them said no. One of them was my friend's friend. He said, the reason I went to that room was so that I can speak truth to power, not so that my name can be shown on any ballot, and that's why he did not go on stage. But he...
So we talked about this last time live anyways, right? We already talked about the bones and biscuits that are voting for Trump. Yeah, let's keep watching, y'all.
Just said, I wanted to speak kalimatul haq, Imam Jair, as the hadith goes. I wanted to speak the truth and know how the Muslims feel, express our anger. So he did this and he left. But as you know, 5, 6 imams, they went there. And when you ask them, they will say that the other party didn't even give this token representation. They turned down even having a Muslim presence on their podium. And they are the ones actually doing genocide. They will say, for sure, Trump cannot get any worse than what is happening. And they have their view, that this person will be better because in the end of the day, because he has certain fiscal policies, he doesn't want American money spent overseas. He doesn't care about lives of us, but he doesn't want money to be spent. So they have an understanding that that party is better. On the flip side of the coin, you have a growing community of very prominent Muslim activists on the Democratic side. And they are, once again, advocating that...
Yeah, we talked about those bones and biscuits too. We talked about the bones and biscuits who are voting, who are calling the Muslims for Democrats, and we talked about the bones and biscuits talking about Muslims for Trump. We're talking about them all. Okay? Anyways, let's keep watching, y'all.
Trump is going to be the worst candidate, and they have the long list of reasons. The Muslim ban, Islamophobia, rhetoric, moving to Jerusalem, capital, etc. And they have their long list over there, and everybody knows this debacle. Now, as I said, my personal opinion is besides the point. It is well known. My letter is out there. But this is a personal opinion. The Islamic fatwa, the verdict that I'm going to say now is different than my personal opinion. And that is, when it comes to political analysis, nobody can invoke the name of Allah that they are on the side of al-haq and the other side is on batil. Nobody can bring in the religious card because political analysis is subjective. It is conjecture. It is not certain. It is not yaqini. And therefore, If you want to accuse the other person of being wrong, no problem, meaning from the political standpoint. You even want to use language that is more harsh. You're a fool, you're an idiot, you're naive. Pause here. You're not going to win people to your argument by insulting them. And if you want people to be convinced,
okay, this right here is where we got a problem, right, with Dr. Yasir Qadhi, okay? This is overly diplomatic, but we're going to let him speak, okay? Let him speak his piece. Let him get what he's got to get. So we got to be fair because he is a scholar, right? We've got to respect him as a scholar, okay? Let's keep watching, y'all.
If you call them foolish, as some of the Muslims are calling each other, you're not going to win. If you call them naive, everybody accuses everybody else of being naive in politics. Everybody accuses everybody else of being naive. Both parties are accusing, both Muslims of each side are accusing each other of being naive. And we also have been accused of being naive when we say vote third party. Everybody is accusing everybody. Who gets to decide? Who will judge the judges? Who will be the final arbiter? Who will decide? Who can predict the future? Who can predict the future such that you think this person is evil and when they get into office, actually it turns out they might do something that is beneficial. Politics is filthy and dirty. Politics is full of lies. Politics is deceit, and we all know this. So therefore, if you want to say they're wrong, you can say that. If you want to say they're foolish, I think you are being foolish when you use the term foolish because you're not going to win points. But it is not un-Islamic. But the minute you say you are a traitor to Allah and His Messenger, the minute you say you have betrayed the ummah, the minute you bring in the religion card, even as I have strong personal views, I will say no, this is crossing the red line. You cannot use the religious card between Muslims who think that the way to support Palestine is this versus this versus this versus this. The only time you can use the religious card is if somebody literally says, I don't care about the genocide. I want my taxes to go down. That person, you say you have betrayed the ummah. You are selfish. You are more concerned about your pennies and cents versus the thousands of children dying. Then you can use a religious card. But anybody who says, I believe third party, Democrat, Republican, is going to be better for the cause of Gaza, that's their analysis. And who are you to force your analysis on other people? Let us go back to our hero, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam.
Okay. So we heard what Dr. Yasir Qadhi had to say. And he's a sheikh, he's a scholar, he's way more knowledgeable than me, way more knowledgeable than most of us. But with all due respect, with Dr. Yasir Qadhi, it's inappropriate in these specific times to be diplomatic with the Muslims. This is not the appropriate time to be diplomatic with the Muslims. Talking about the politics in our time is subjective. It's even impossible. It's a virtual impossibility for it to be subjective, anyways. How are you going to say that the ones who are with Trump and the ones who are with Kamala Harris both have the best interests at the Muslims at heart? Right now is the time for decisiveness, and clear speech, not ambiguous speech. Now, this is why we said at the beginning we have to give Dr. Yasir Qadhi a lot of slack, because he did say in the beginning that he cannot express his opinions on the minbar because of, as you all know, we talked about this many, many times, and he said that even his personal opinions, right, he might have strong personal opinions, but, and what he is doing right now, he's trying to mitigate an impending fitna that is coming with the Muslims because of these elections. By saying, don't call this one hypocrite, don't call that one hypocrite, blah, 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 right? So he's trying to mitigate the necessary division that will be caused as a result of these elections. Divisions will be caused. Because what will happen is, no matter who gets in power, whether it's Trump or Kamala, those people are going to carry out the agenda of the Zionists. And then the Muslims will be like, you see? And they're going to be like, we told you not to vote for those folks. So you can't be talking about, in our time, it's subjective. It's not subjective, actually, right? It's more clear now than it was in the times of Obama and the times of Bush. And it's very clear in our times. because the dust and the veil has been removed away from these parties, family. The fact of the matter is that democracy is a tool for pacification for the masses. It is also a tool for power for corporate oligarchs. The quicker you understand this is the quicker you will understand how to play within the system, okay? This is one of the main reasons why we hold the position that democracy by nature is kufri. Even before hearing it from any of the ulama, which the ulama have said again, it is a kufri system, right? You can listen to Shaykh Mukbil about this matter and whatnot, rahimahullah. But our esteemed ulama, even before hearing them, we understand as black folk, especially, we understand that this system is devilish and demonic, right? Especially if you're black. If you're black, the only history you have with democracy is to have it weaponized against you. And it's continuing to, and it's being weaponized against us from its inception, okay? We are the only people, if you don't know what we're talking about, if you're new here, we, black folk, are the only people through Western democratic systems which have been legislatively, militarily, and politically indicted against with the system of democracy. Democracy has always been historically mobilized against us by our very own governments. The very own governments that claim to rule us, they will use these systems to enslave us, imprison us, sell us crack, sell us coke, make sure that we are not educated. They will use these systems, these very same systems that you are fighting so hard against, fighting so hard to protect, rather, as you as Muslims. They use these systems to oppress us. We know this better than anybody else. I highly suggest you go look up, who am I thinking about, people? Who am I thinking about again? Dred Scott, thank you. Go look up Dred Scott. Go look up the 13th Amendment. Go look up what's going on in the favelas in Brazil. Go look up the what they did in Argentina to black folk. Go look up what they did to Colombia with black folk. Go look up in Mexico. Black Mexicans finally got recognized in 2015. These are natural citizens of these countries. You can't tell me nothing. Are you kidding me? Y'all can't tell me nothing, family. You can't tell me nothing. We're not like you immigrants. We're not immigrants. We're not immigrants in the least. Because we didn't come here by immigration. We didn't immigrate here. But that's a different topic for a different day. The point is that politics here in the West is a Coliseum event. Just like UFC, just like Major League Baseball, just like NBA. Politics in the West is a Coliseum event, especially American politics. Okay, so every 4 years, the masses gather together to choose who they think will be their leader. And every 4 years, these same people that they empower turn around and empower the owners and controllers of financial capital. Okay? Every 4 years. Okay? They don't empower the people, they empower the owners and controllers of financial capital. It has always been like that. Okay? Dark money, quid pro quo, and on and on and on. Right? So Zionists, they don't care who's in power because they influence whoever is ruling to support Israel. The same thing with Big Pharma, which is why in the US you don't have universal health care. It's because of Big Pharma. You get it? Okay. The same thing with the banks. That's why the banks got, bailouts. They bail out for the banks and not for the people who were losing their houses. The same thing with big oil. The same thing with the military and industrial complex, which is why you have all these wars and on and on and on, right? This is what's happening here. Okay? So, I lost my train of thought. 1 second, family. The dark money interest, they're the ones who move what is going on in the political landscape, okay? The masses will fight each other over some mundane issue like immigration or whatnot, for example, and dark money moves in a manner that they will capitalize on the immigration issue. So no matter which party is in power, they're going to capitalize on it. For example, if you vote for the Republicans, they will capitalize on it by building detention centers for immigrants. And if you vote Democrats, they will capitalize on it by cheap labor. You get it? And all the while, the people, they suffer, okay? Either way, the people are going to suffer, right? The money interests in Congress, they also buy out the executive branches, okay? So they buy out the Congress. Of course, they buy out the presidency, okay, of course. However, something major happened during Donald Trump's last presidency, right, in 2016, which has never happened before, which to me was a clear indication, a very clear indication that democracy was coming to a close in the US. And we're going to have a different system or something that might resemble it, but it's not going to be the same as what you witnessed before, right? And I believe that this election is the final chapter of that. You see, you cannot control the government unless you control the courts. And the Supreme Courts were designed as to be a check and balance for the executive branch, correct? That's what they're designed for, okay? But what Donald Trump did is that he stacked the Supreme Court with Republican judges. This is the first time this ever happened. Okay, so now they control the Supreme Court. And if you recall, in 2020, he was trying to use the Supreme Court to actually steal the election, right? If you recall that, right? However, there's one small problem, right? And that is, okay, so now you got the executive branch, the presidency, you got the Supreme Court, but there is still a very important piece of this puzzle, which is that the courts, the courts that are left over are the state courts or the appellate courts, okay? So big money, they want to control the appellate courts. And I strongly suggest you have a look at Project 2025 to see where this is going, because they outlined this already in Project 2025. Okay. So the appellate courts are important because this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of people's rights. Okay. Rubber meets the road in terms of corporate laws being enforced and so on. Okay. It's in the state courts. You get it? And it was designed like that, the separation between the federal courts and the state courts, because of Black people. Okay. This is why it was designed like that. It was designed like that because the states didn't want to give up their slaves. And the federal courts were like, oh, you know what? We can't get in the way of states' rights. That's how it all started. Okay, but that's a different topic for a different time again, right? This is a whole different thing. We talked about this before, right? But anyways, I digress. Okay. All that was left in order to achieve a comprehensive power dynamic of supremacy was to capture the state courts. So the question is, has this been done? That is the question that y'all need to be asking. Because you are playing a game of you know, of zero sum, and you don't even know how the rules. You don't even know the rules of the game. Okay. The question is, has this been done? Yes or no? Somebody put in the chat, please. Have the state courts been captured? I want to see what y'all think. Have the state courts been captured? Yes or no? Sister Tika says no. What y'all think? What do y'all think? Have the state courts been captured? Yes or no? World General says been done. Big money is involved and state politics also. And he says yes. Well, here's your answer, okay? World General has a major point about big money and dark money in the state courts. But there's another huge thing that happened because of what Donald Trump did during his presidency, which is an issue now, a major issue in these elections. Does anybody know what it is? It is one of the major issues in this election right now. Does anybody know what it is? It's one thing to do it with to monetize the courts and to buy your judges, nothing, but it's a completely different thing to capture them through the legislative branch. And what has happened is, because of what Donald Trump did with stacking the federal court system with Republican judges. Thank you, Sister Tika, she got it. Because of that, right? The Supreme Court now came out with this ruling, seemingly out of nowhere, overturning Roe versus Wade. Now, why do you think they did that? Do you think it's just because of abortion, just because they don't want women to get abortions and stuff like that? No. This was a means of capturing the state courts. Yeah, get it? That's why this was done. And if you don't believe me, just look at the language they used when they overturned it. They said, and I'm quoting here, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled, and this is the opinion of the Supreme Court." And they also said that the Supreme Court has overreached with this ruling, and that they must allow, hold on, I'm going to quote here, "It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." The point here is that return the issue to the people's elected representatives. That's the whole point. So now you find in the southern states, particularly the southern states, all of these I want to say power grabs within the appellate courts now, with these certain laws regarding not just abortion, but with border control and all kinds of stuff. You get it? Which is why, this is another reason why I think Donald Trump will become president. It had nothing to do with the votes. You have pressure from overseas, okay? You have all this pressure from overseas. Benjamin Netanyahu, explicitly expressed his support for Donald Trump. You have Vladimir Putin explicitly expressed his support for Donald Trump. You have the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia explicitly expressed his support for Donald Trump. So now there's these outward pressures from outside of the US, and then you have these inside pressures, which were caused from grabbing control of the federal courts and now the state courts. So I believe that even if somehow Donald Trump loses numbers wise, he has enough support from outside the country and within the legal system inside the country to basically steal the election. And the main obstacle in his way is not the votes, but rather his mental state. That's the main thing. Because even his support from outside, they really don't want him like that. But they understand how corruptible he is. They know this, they understand this. So anybody out here talking about, it's subjective, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. This was a power play that gave MAGA a ridiculous edge in usurping authority. They're not doing it by the rules of the game. They're playing a completely different game. So the idea that voting for Trump will somehow end the violence in the Middle East is ludicrous. And it is, in fact, hypocrisy. It is, in fact, hypocrisy. And it is, in fact, treacherous. With all due respect with Dr. Yasir Qadhi. And it goes the same for voting for Kamala Harris. You can't have it any other way. The resume is right there in front of you. And it should be classified as such. It should be classified as ludicrous, hypocrisy, outright treacherous, asinine. This is how it should be classified. Not as a subjective difference of opinion. Not something that is, open to ikhtilaf. And it is imperative for Muslim leaders such as Dr. Yasir Qadhi and people who in these high positions who have, lots of knowledge in Islam, speak clearly. You have to speak clear because it's not a time for, whatchamacallit, trying to mitigate the upcoming fitna. The fitna's coming whether you want it or not. It's coming whether you want it or not. And in my humble opinion, for Muslims, for black folk, right? There are only really two options here. You vote green or you don't vote. Anything else? Anything outside of those two options is absolutely asinine. Those are the least of the two evils. That's the actual lesser of two evils. There's no lesser of two evils for voting Democrat or a Republican. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. It is ridiculous. You can't have one group voting for Trump and another group voting for Harris and another group voting third party, and another group not voting, and yet all of them being rewarded for their intention. That's impossible. That's a virtual impossibility. And it's imperative that the Muslim scholarship, may Allah reward all of them and bless all of them, and I mean tremendously, to speak up with a clear, united voice. But I digress, family. I think we've gone long enough now. I did want to get into another video, but you know, we've been going for an hour, and I do want to come back either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow to go live for y'all, right? But make sure, and I don't want anybody to say that, you know, Brother Bilal, he's smashing Dr. Yasir Qadhi. That is not what this is. I don't believe in the layman tearing down their scholarship. I know Dr. Yasir Qadhi. I know a lot of South Asians and whatnot. They love Dr. Yasir Qadhi. They ride or die with him and whatnot. I have a lot of difference of opinions with Dr. Yasir Qadhi, right? But I respect him as a scholar, right? And this is not that type of video, but this is showing, with all due respect to the immigrant community, it's showing really it's like you're politically anemic and infantile and naive. And it's not surprisingly being spread through those who lead you, because the truth of the matter is, you are immigrants and you are what we call in the Black community and really in the Western community, model minorities. That's what you are. You're model minorities. So the opportunities that you get them as long as you're willing to do the things to get them. Like, for example, open up a liquor store in the Black community. Selling Black folk, whatchamacallit, pork and loose cigarettes and all kind of stuff. You know? How many masajid were started with the help and the support of the Black community just to move out and turn their backs on it? You get me? So we do respect Dr. Yasir Qadhi because of his scholarship and his leadership and things of that nature. But the reason why I chose, out of all the lectures that I listened to from what's his called, Dr. Yasir Qadhi, is because of this issue, this disconnect between the immigrant community and what's really going on the ground. And I hope this kind of opens your eyes, right? If you're an immigrant, right? Because this is the truth. This is the reality of the situation. If you want to change it through democratic processes, you must learn the game. And the game is not about picking your next oppressor. That is ludicrous. What are you talking about today? What are you talking about? That is not the game. And there's so many Muslims with so much money. And when we start talking like this in a voice where, oh yeah, this Muslim can vote Trump, and this Muslim can vote Harris, and this Muslim can vote Green, and this Muslim can't vote, and it's all valid, that's why you're disunited. That's why, because you're not speaking with a clear voice. And it's very obvious at least two of those choices should not be an issue. It should not be an issue. Two of those issues are very, very, very easy for Muslims to say, I'm not voting Democrat, I'm not voting Republican. Period. Same for the black folk. I'm not voting Democrat, I'm not voting Republican. And once you've recognized that, from there, you galvanize the people within your community. If you're going to practice power within your community, to put your own people in power on a local level. I highly suggest somebody read Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. But I digress. Like, subscribe, share, family. Support me on PayPal, Patreon, buy me a coffee. And we will see you next time. Subhanallah, hamdik wa shari la'ant wa astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayk, and free the land, beloved, free the land, free the land, free the land.